All right, guys, welcome back to another tutorial. Today, we're going to be covering a cloth simulation. So this is going to be pretty fun, pretty easy to do. It's a little bit intensive on the computer, but we're going to try our best to break it down into simple steps. Start out by adding a plane, slight. I'm just going to make the plane times bigger than it is, maybe 3. All right, that looks good. It really doesn't matter how big you make the plane. Tab into edit mode, right click, subdivide, and then there's going to be this little drop down here. I think I'm going to do 50. That looks pretty good for right now. We can come back to this. As you guys can see, the plane is subdivided. Tab out of edit mode, give it a quick save. Go to your physics properties, apply a cloth property to this, then go over to our gravity settings and just turn your gravity to 0. Now, we're going to go ahead and add a force field in here. I'm going to do a turbulence force field, a value of, how about 10? Then we're going to go ahead and run the simulation. Happens. As you guys can see, we have a little bit of movement in our cloth. It's not nearly as intense as I would like it to be. I'm going to click on my turbulence force field, and I'm going to make that 20. I'm also going to add another force field. I'm going to add a force, just a regular force field. Bring that up here. Value -5. Go ahead and play this back. As you guys can see, we're getting a lot of movement here. This is really good. Now, there's a couple of things I want to do. Now that we have some movement with our cloth, what we want to do is we really want this to be intense. So what I'm going to do is back up to frame 1. Now, I haven't baked the simulation yet. Click on your plane, tab into edit mode, right click, subdivide it one more time. Now what we just did there is we gave it a lot more geometry to work with. So now when we press play, and this is going to go a little bit slow depending on your computer, we're going to get some really intense cloth sim here. So as you guys can see, we're getting a lot more wrinkles. It's going very slow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on my force field, 20, and let's go ahead and see what we get. All right, we're getting a little bit more wrinkles. That's what I'm looking for. I'm going to go ahead and take my turbulence. I'm going to delete it, and I'm actually going to add in a vortex. All right, we're going to add in a vortex. We'll give it a value of 3. Go ahead and see what we get. All right, so we're getting a little bit of twisting motion. We're also going to get, see how the cloth begins to rise towards our force field up here? We don't want that too much, so I'm going to go ahead and grab my force field, center it back to the bottom here, maybe towards the middle. That's fine. And then for the vortex, we're going to go ahead and give that a value of 2. Go ahead and play this back. Now we're going to get some really interesting stuff going on here. This is really interesting. So as you guys can see, I'm not gonna shade this smooth just yet, but you guys can see we're getting some really interesting design work with this cloth, and everything's being kind of gravitating towards the center. Now, since we turned the gravity off, that's the only way we're gonna get something like this. If the gravity was on, let's go. That would look like -9.8 gravity. Back, you can see that the plane is just going to fall down. We don't want that. That's why I turned the gravity to 0, because we get this sort of almost anti-gravity effect, which is exactly what I'm going for. Now, for the actual vortex itself, you guys can also experiment with the shape. Right now, we were on plane. This is point. It's going to be slightly different. Now, one of the things we're going to do with this cloth simulation, this looks really cool. Tell it's very slow right now. We are going to add a subdiv modifier. Now, this is only going to be applied when we render. Right now, if we add this in, it's going to render very slowly. You can see just by adding that how much more smooth that is. You can bump that up to 2 for the render. I would turn it off in the viewport right now. You can shade this smooth. Turn that off for right now. Now, this is just for viewing purposes. Now, what I would like you guys to do also is you're probably going to want to bake this out. But before we bake it out, I actually want to add a collision object in the middle here. I want our cloth to kind of surround something. Let's go ahead and add in. We can add in sand. Now, actually, let's just add in a sphere for simplicity. All right, we have our sphere. I'm just going to go ahead and drag it up here. I'm also going to put my force field in the middle of the sphere so that everything is attracted towards the sphere. Click on your sphere, add a collision modifier, and we should be good to go. One thing I'm going to quickly do is unsubdivide this. I'm going to go to edge, unsubdivide, just so we can get a quick simulation here and see what this might look like. So you guys can see we're getting a really, really quick simulation here. And the reason I'm doing this and I unsubdivided it, that's a really hard word to say, is because I want to see how everything's colliding. You can see it's a big mess. And the reason it's a big mess is because we have to look at our edge, our collision. Make sure you're clicking on your sphere when you look at the outer thickness. Right now it's at 0.02. I'm going to drop it down to 0.001. We're going to go ahead and play back again. Let's see what we get this time. Remember, I haven't baked anything yet. I just want to see how everything's colliding here. All right, one setting I'm going to turn on for my cloth, and I'm going to go back to frame 1. Click on your plane, scroll down to collisions, and enable self-collision here. You can mess with the quality too. Just remember, the higher the quality is, the slower this is going to, like the longer this is going to. This looks a lot better. Now, what's really cool is even though we have a low subdivided count on our plane, we re-enable our cloth subdivision surface. See, looks really, really good. And there's a lot of fun things we can do with this. One of the things I encourage you guys to play with too is the actual speed. Unit, no, not unit. Oh, you know what? It might be under the actual cloth. Speed multiplier. Let's try 2. Should be a little faster. Yep, it's a little faster. Still get the same simulation. And this is really interesting to me because you have that self-collision. You have this cloth kind of wrapping around your object. Now, when we should get pretty smooth playback here. Now, remember, this cloth is not subdivided a lot. So if we want to get an even more realistic simulation, we tab into edit mode, subdivide it one more time. And when I press play, my computer might catch on fire. So I'm going to disable subdivision. Let's go ahead and press play and let's see what we get. Look at how fine the detail is in the crinkles of the cloth now. Go ahead and zoom in on this, how we're doing. You can see that because we adjusted that collision edge, and you can kind of see, you're going to have to fine tune this. If I get really close, you can kind of see how the cloth barely touches the surface of the sphere. So one of the things I want you guys to do is really play with those settings, those outer thickness settings on your collision modifier for the sphere. This looks really good though. Yeah, so as you guys can see, we're getting really fun physics here. You guys are going to want to bake this. So let me show you guys how to actually bake this out so that we can start to get to some material. Go to your cloth settings, scroll down, find the cache menu. 250 is fine for the end. Click on Bake All Dynamics. And as you guys can see at the bottom, our timeline scrubber is going to go ahead and go all the way to 250. So it might take a quick second. One of the things I suggest is to turn off the subdivision modifier, because when you play back in viewport, you're just going to get a lot of lag. And depending on the type of setup you have, I'm lucky enough and blessed to have this amazing 3070 running for me right now. But some of us don't have that, so I would highly suggest, you don't want Blender to crash on you, turn that off in viewport. And that's your subdivision surface modifier. Now, as soon as this is done, we should be able to play this back at a pretty smooth frame rate. Excited to see how this ends up looking. And again, we're just kind of adding some different force fields. We're experimenting with the settings. Yeah, this is really interesting. So let's go ahead and see what we get. All right, we're going to go ahead and play this back now. It should be fully baked. And as you can see, we're running at about 18 frames a second, which isn't terrible. And it looks pretty good. When you do end up playing this back at a higher frame rate, it'll look really fluid and smooth. This is awesome. This looks really cool. Let's go ahead and add some materials and see if we can make this look really interesting. Snap to our camera. Let's bring our camera up. Let's go to view, view here. Let's go ahead and just add a little HDRI in here. You know, I love my HDRIs. I'm just going to add, I think this one right here is probably fine just for right now. The sphere, I'm just going to shade that smooth and just make it kind of like a chrome material. We'll just raise that metallic lower softness. Camera, I'm just going to raise it up just, or maybe two. Now, I actually think I want to swap the HDRI before we apply any more materials. That's pretty cool. I like this one. I'm going to enable my depth of field. I'm going to target my sphere. I'm going to really lower that. I just want to get some really interesting dynamic shot here. Now, this is pretty cool, and if you turn off your overlays, which is this little button up here, you can really see what your render is going to be. It's pretty interesting. Now, for our actual material, for our cloth, we can pretty much do whatever we want. I'm just going to see if I can make it color. So many things we could. It's kind of cool. I kind of like that. Now, what's really cool about this is that since this is all baked out for us, we can take any frame and we can just render it. And it'll look really nice. And then if you want it to be even more realistic, you can add some more collision objects. You guys can add different force fields in there to interact with your cloth. But right now, if I just go forward, you can see I have this really nice animation. Even this frame right here is pretty. One of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to solid view, turn my overlay back on, add in another plane, scale it 20, bring it down, make sure that it is filling in the background, up a little more, and I'm just going to go ahead and give this like a darker color here with a high roughness. I just want to have like a nice background. I also kind of want to play with the idea of an orthographic camera on this. That looks really and this is totally up to you guys. This is just me kind of playing around with the system here. Sorry, with the. I'm also going to go ahead and even out my camera position, give it a nice 45-degree angle. Play this back. See, everything's looking good. Now we're playing at quite a slow frame rate here. But when you go to render this out, this is going to look really good. And I actually think I might conclude the tutorial there. I'll go over some render settings, but this looks pretty good overall. If you go to material preview, you guys can zoom in. You can see that the sphere is blurry right now. So I'm going to go ahead and disable my focus object. I'm just going to adjust the distance manually here. So you guys can see, really fine tune this. And I think I'm going to bump this up to f-stop of 4. So we still get some depth of field, but it's not so intense that you can't see the detail of the cloth. Now, a lot of you are probably wondering, what if we wanted the cloth to have like a little bit more to it, like, and maybe actually look like a cloth material? Well, I'm going to go ahead and head over to my real-time materials pack, which let me open that up for you guys and go ahead and check out what we have here. I don't know if there was a cloth material, but if there is, I'll snag it real quick. Let's see if it was anywhere, it would be. There's a lot of really interesting materials. And like I said, you do not have to choose a cloth material. That's totally up to you guys. You can make your own material too. I think there's like a leather section. Here we go. Okay. Stucco, camo. Oh, here it is. Here it is. Here's like the cloth and leather. So these are really interesting because they have some surface roughness and some displacement to them. So what if we also one on the top right is not. All right, I'm just gonna highlight this whole group and we're gonna try different ones and see. I'm quite literally gonna copy that over. Thank you, Ducky3. Paste those in. I'm going to move those to a new collection called Hide. Hide them. I'm gonna snap back to my camera, click on my cloth, and I'm just gonna go through these. What I think. That's a pretty interesting one. That's not terrible. I like a black leather. Blue lizard. Not a fan of that, but it's still cool. That's interesting. I'm definitely going to play with the scale of it. That was my. Here we go. Pigmented leather. That's kind of a nice one. Red leather. Red lizard. Top green. The top green leather is pretty cool. I kind of like the pigmented leather. I think I'm also going to adjust the size of itself. So if you can see, I kind of adjusted the actual scale of the material. This looks really nice because I'm actually convinced that this is like real leather. This looks really. Go ahead and play with the roughness value a little. That looks nice. The lighting looks great. You can see we have our HDRI reflecting on everything. And if we go ahead and play this back, you can see how nice this looks. You can see it kind of like crinkles. So good. The only other thing I think I'll add here is I'll just add a solidify modifier to the plane. Let's go there. So I'm gonna random colors so I can see modifiers. I want to say the solidify should probably go. Should go. Let's see what happens. Let's see what here. So now you can see that our cloth has a little bit of an edge to it. So it looks pretty darn good. I'm pretty happy with it. Again, you guys can choose pretty much whatever you want. For the background, for this black part here underneath the plane, hard to see it. perhaps the same one. Actually, you know what I'm going to do, guys? I'm going to go right back to my materials. Thank you again, Ducky3D, for these materials. And I'm going to see if there's any type of material I can use for that might. It's really nice. I love when you don't have to put as much work into shading and stuff like that. You can just kind of drag and drop. That's my favorite way to create, because then I can quickly iterate on ideas. Dark ceramic, that might be a good option. I'll hold on to that one. We have rubber. Let's see what we have. Cracked metal. Try one more. Oh, there's some like cement ones too. Really nice. That might be. All right, let me copy those over. Go back to our cloth simulation, which is still baked, which is going to go to my hide collection. And I'm going to back to render view. Click on my bottom plane. Out a few materials. That's not really what I'm looking for. Dark ceramic. That's kind of nice. I think I like that. And I think I'll just adjust the scale of that, which great about this one is you can adjust the bump of the floor a little bit. I think that looks great. I know it's kind of hard for you guys to see, so let me in here. See, looks fantastic. We have a lot of detail in this shot here. We have our materials, we have our chrome. All right, I'll do one more. There's one more thing I will do. I'm actually going to, this is probably confuse you guys for a second. I'm going to duplicate the sphere, hide the original one. Now this sphere right here, I'm going to get rid of the original one still has the collision. Duplicated one, get rid of the collision. I want to add a subdiv surface to that so it's a lot smoother. And then I want to quickly go back to my real-time materials, and I think he has a scratched metal on here. Let's see. I want to say it's in. This is a fast gold material, and that looks pretty darn good, but I think it's different. Fast metal. Galvanized steel. I'm going to copy a few of these. Glass material. All right. I'm going to copy these over, and let's just go ahead and swap them out. How they look. I'm going to paste those in, put them in the hide folder, and then I'm going to go back to rendered view. Here. On materials. That's not really. Not bad, but it's not what I'm looking for. That's interesting. So many choices. This is like a dirty glass. That doesn't look terrible, but I kind of looking for something a little bit more shiny. This is a fast gold material. I actually really like this material because I feel like the gold against the leather looks really nice. So I think I might go with this. Also going to make sure my motion blur. Oh, let's go ahead and adjust the scale. Good. This looks fantastic. Roughness. I think that looks really good. What do you guys think? I'm pretty happy with it. Yeah, I think that looks fantastic. I know it's kind of harder for you guys to see on the live stream, but as you guys can see, we do have our cloth sim. It looks great. This is really simple. So that we didn't really do much here with the cloth sim. There's just so much more you could do. And like I said, you can render out any part of this and it should look pretty darn good. I'm going to render out this frame right here. Let's go ahead and go over some render settings. I'm just running 1920 by 1920. I'll probably have this as a YouTube thumbnail, so I'm going to do 1920 by 1080. And I'm just going to go ahead and zoom my camera out. Camera here. Zoom out a little. Now I think I'm going to render that frame out. I think it looks really good. So let's go ahead and render this frame out. And for those of you watching on Instagram, let me make sure I turn this so you guys can see this easily. As you guys can see, it does look really good. My render settings, I'm just going to keep those as I usually have them. All of my bounces are set to 20. Probably think I'm a little crazy, but that's kind of how I get my high quality results. Copy that, go ahead. Max sample is 300. Let's just go ahead and see what we get with our current settings. And don't forget to enable your blur. It's out. Hopefully nothing shows up that should show up. Again, that kind of happens sometimes when you guys are going to render stuff out. Looks like this frame is going to take about 30 seconds, which is kind of expected because the materials we're using they're procedural. So Blender's going to have kind of a harder time calculating the way the light hits it. A lot of you guys probably just want to use your like standard PBR materials. I think this looks great though. All right, took about 28 seconds there. That looks pretty good for the most part. I don't really notice anything wrong with that render. So on that note, I think I'm going to call it. Now, I will render this full animation out. This looks really good. I'm very, very happy with it. You can also experiment with different angles and such. It's kind of up to you guys. I mean, I could imagine some other different angles where you're a little bit more on the side view and the plane starts out flat, and then it cranks together like that. But I do think this looks pretty good for the most part. So I'm just going to go ahead and save this frame, and at some point I will render the entire thing out. Probably not today, because I do want to move forward and do another tutorial. Right. Go ahead and save that. Now, this is pretty fun. I enjoyed this. I think what we'll do next is we'll probably do something else physics related if you guys are interested in that. For those of you watching on YouTube, thank you guys again. Don't forget to render this out as a PNG sequence so you can use all the frames, and so that if your render fails, you can. Thank you guys on YouTube. Have a good day, and make sure you guys check out my channel. Subscribe if you guys liked this video, and be sure to check out my other tutorials. I have a lot of tutorials on the channel. Let me know if you guys have any questions about this. Drop them down in the comments below, and I will see you guys. See you later.